What happens when you close on your asset, on your apartment? Hmm. Today, Chad Sutton from Quatro Capital joins us, and he tells us some real life true stories of things that happen when you are investing in apartments. Some of the definitely ask me how I know, some of the things that you need to write into your purchase agreements, which you probably are, but just to double check and everything. And he also goes on to explain, how your W 2 job might not be as secure as you are thinking that it is. And we wrap up with this really great discussion on a project that Quatro Capital is rolling out probably right now when you are listening to this episode. So you are going to love this really fun interview with Chad Sutton. If you have not yet subscribed, please make sure that you hit that subscribe button so you don't miss another episode. And please take a moment. It doesn't take long. Just scroll to the very, 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 very bottom and leave a quick review. You have no idea how much that fuels my heart and just keeps me motivated. I'll keep doing this without reviews, but it's really exciting to hear from you. And also, I do want to hear from you. You, my awesome audience, are really super important to me. And so connect with me over on LinkedIn, or feel free to connect. There will be a link down in the show notes. So connect with me and schedule a time to talk. We can talk about mindset. We can talk about investing and how to get you going or how to take you to the next step. All right, without ado, enjoy this episode. Chad, I am so excited to dive into conversation with you. I think that my energy level just shot up 25%. I'm not trying to outdo you or anything,
Well, it's a pleasure to be here, Julie. As you were saying, I'm pretty sure my energy level also went up 25% just talking with you in the last 5 minutes. So thanks for that.
I'm not going to lie. There might be a second cup of coffee involved. I'm not sure. Maybe third. Okay. I'm kidding. So we were
But
talking.
really not.
I really try to stay away from caffeine in the afternoons. I already have enough energy. Before we were recording, we were talking about just all of those ask me how I knows that come along as you're actually active in the real estate space. And it doesn't matter if you're in single family, if you have dues, singles, tries, whatever you have, you're going to have your ask me how I know. And you guys just had a very interesting closing. Now, usually people have an interesting experience when they're going to do due diligence. I happened to walk in when I was in residential sales. I happened to walk in to homeless people just squatting in a house. Okay, so I'm like, and I've walked in on some other things, but that was on the front end, and the people chose not to purchase that property. So I'm just wondering,
I'm sure.
You purchased a property, you're closing closed. Tell us a little bit about what you've learned in your experience.
Julie, you can't put some of this stuff in a book. And even if you read the book, there'll be new things like this, right? Some of this you just learn from being there and doing it, and you can't make this stuff up. So one of our most recent stories, and one of many, right? We were purchasing about 110 unit property in Decatur, Georgia. And hot market, great place to be, real happy with it. It's got some work to be done, but that's the value, right?
Right.
Well, it is in an area of town where it's Atlanta, so there is a little bit of a homeless problem. Atlanta's growing massively, and so this is kind of just the nature of things. Well, I get a call from my regional manager, whom I had sent out the day before closing to walk the vacant units, right? Or what we thought were vacant. I get a phone call just a little bit later, and it's Lisa saying, Chad, I don't know how to tell you this. I'm like, okay, that can't be good. And she goes, well, the first unit was vacant and that was clean. And then we walked over to unit E3 where we noticed a window had been broken. I'm like, uh-oh, this isn't good. So as we get closer, we hear rustling and other noises, and they push the door open. And I kid you not, in there are 6 homeless individuals who are having a drug, sex, and alcohol literally orgy right there in Unit E3. The place is trashed. The carpet has been burned, pulled up. There's trash everywhere, holes in the wall. The unit is trash. Well, of course, that's where my head went because I'm thinking, oh my gosh, I'm buying this property in less than 24 hours.
Right.
What is the unit conditions? The next thing out of my mouth, sadly, Julie, was, well, did you get pictures? And so I'm sure this regional was like, who am I working for? Quickly backed up and said, of the unit. So
Right, exactly.
the I know there is make sure in your purchase and sale agreements, you have a clause about units that are not rent ready when you take over, because that unit was not rent ready and we got some money out of that. So the day before closing.
Wow. Okay. So, well, let's talk about that clause. And what does that clause look like? How would you write that? How did you write that in there? And do you write that in their standard? Is that your
Yes.
standard of practice? And let's just unpack that a little bit for the listeners.
It is standard. And guys, I'm not an attorney, so please consult your real estate attorney about this. Any qualified real estate attorney will have this clause or some version of it. But effectively, it states that for any, let's see if I can quote it verbatim, for any unit that is vacant for more than 5 days prior to closing, and it defines what that is, like missing refrigerators, missing stoves, damaged flooring, like major things. This isn't like a nick on the wall, but if it is like not in the rent ready condition based on what we would consider to be the seller's standard of rent ready, right? I mean, because if it's not a, we'll say, savvy operator, right? You don't want to
Right.
say, hey, they're never going to agree to renovate a unit for you. But if it's
Right.
missing certain key functionalities, right? We say the seller will provide us a credit of 5,000 US dollars. Now that's market, and that's kind of on the market towards the buyer side. I've agreed to this, in the $2,500 range. You're probably going to land somewhere between 2,500 and 5,000 dollars on that. So it's really as simple as that. Just like, look, if you turn over units that are not rent ready and have been vacant for longer than 5 days, I need you to give me a credit, because it prevents the seller from saying, okay, well, you're under contract, you're going to buy my property, I'm just going to stop for 90 days or whatever the contract is,
Right.
turning over units and spending money, and I'll just let them sit. And that's your problem. And then you could inherit 25 units that are missing refrigerators and have several things down. So it's a pretty significant clause.
That is, yeah, it's absolutely imperative. Now, here's a question I have for you. My kids and I, we've been playing Would You Rather. So this is going to be fun. Would you rather have a vacant unit with this crazy scenario going on and a credit, or would you rather have the current owner place a tenant possibly haphazardly into the unit so it's filled
Ooh,
and occupied?
that depends on the owner. I've actually played that game before. There are some owners where I've said, yes, please rent them up at your current standards because we've approved we're in line with your criteria, and they know they're a good operator. And there's some who, if they didn't sign another lease, I actually let one sit vacant for about 6 weeks before closing. I was like, just don't touch it, don't renovate it, just leave it alone, and I'll take over at closing. So it depends on the seller.
You sound a little bit like my daughter, and I always tell her it's a best case scenario. Whatever you can make in your head, it's always the best thing. So,
well, the problem is I'm a recovering engineer, Julie, and I have those tendencies where I think about things way too much. So a simple yes or no answer, I'm going to make it a maybe no matter what. So
fair enough. But out of curiosity, since we're talking about tenants, and I prefer to call them residents. Actually, I think that your
I
team
do
does
as well. Yes.
Just
I might slip sometimes, but we think they're people, not numbers. So
yeah, exactly. And I happen to know your team, which is really
yeah.
super fun. Erin, her episode will air sooner than yours and everything, but and Kim's going to be on at some point, I know.
Mm-hmm.
So glad she's well. But
Yes.
when you're talking about the tenant, the resident base, I never call them tenants, which is really funny that all of a sudden I'm doing that. But anyhow, we're talking about placing them, right?
Mm-hmm.
And trying to find the right fit, the right person. What is the best criteria for you? Because, and I'm going to put a little asterisk here. What I know of your team, of Quatro Capital, is that they are very resident friendly and very nurturing towards community and people and things like that. So it's part of that heartbeat. And so how does that play out in actual, lease agreements?
I'm gonna have to steal that, the Quattro heartbeat. I like that. That's beautiful.
You're welcome. I
Um,
think I've given you a ton of gems.
I know, but make sure it's not trademarked.
Right.
Um, so yes, it really is. That's the intangible, guys. I mean, you can put a value play on paper all day long, right? And make the numbers work. But the intangible is when you're good to people, when you treat them like people, right? You're really going to have people that A, care about the property, B, stay, and C, tell their friends who are other good people, right? If you're not just putting heads in beds, as they say, right?
I'm
So
going
the
to borrow that
criteria,
one.
yeah, heads and beds. I've heard that a lot. So the criteria for us is, of course, we have the numerical criteria of, like, there's no felonies in the last 3 years, no, bad rental history. We typically float in the 25 to 30% income ratio range is kind of what we do for workforce housing. But beyond that, we can't discriminate. So you have to really apply, offer everything to everyone. But we do tend to lend more towards, people who, families, people who are going to treat the unit with respect, people who are going to appreciate the unit, right? So we might not really be marketing, and you get who you market to, right?
Right.
So we may not really be marketing to the group of four guys who are young college grads, and going to be wild. We're going to market to, the single mother with two children, because that's where they're going to, they need a safe, quality, affordable place to live, right? Or the small family or something like that. So it really is about building a community. And so we do try to, um, market to the same type of tenant who is going to enjoy living around the others. Does that make sense?
It does. It does. And that's part of creating the community,
Hmm.
within the units that you have. I just lost
Yeah.
my word there.
Yeah. Well, that's the killer, right? So I've got a project in Knoxville, Tennessee that just came to mind, right? We are literally, these have like $250 rent bump opportunities on them, and we're putting a lot of money into them, right? So it's not like we're just raising rents on people. We are turning over a rough property, right? And so I could easily, like, I turn away, or my management company, I don't do this. My management company turns away more resident applicants than we accept, because there's a lot of people who will jump in there tomorrow, and my vacancy number would probably go down. But we tend to hold out a little bit longer for the truly qualified person who's going to take care of that unit and respect the community and add to it, rather than just come in there and maybe tear it up and maybe not pay rent because they're just looking for a place to squat. So, you know,
Yeah, and that does happen. If you're not careful, that does happen.
yes.
So I'm wondering if you have any, things that you've learned the hard way. Since again, we're talking about residents, we talked about closing and some of the criteria, but have you had some resident experiences where you needed to let them go and they just weren't going? And if so, how did you resolve that?
Yes, we've had several of those. And it's typically closer to the takeover, right? We buy properties that are not exactly the pinnacle of operation, right? So we do inherit a lot of those. I'll tell you, I think some of my favorite stories are the ones, some of my Atlanta residents are a different kind of people, right? On the rougher side of town. In terms of, we'll just say, we'll say tenacity, right? That's probably the right word.
They have a lot of
So
perseverance as well.
perseverance, that's another one. Yeah, they have perseverance. So, we have had individuals who got frustrated because we're all of a sudden cracking down the rules, and they just turned the faucets
Mhm.
on and let them run for 3 days. And so next month we got a $12,000 water bill where it's usually 2,000. And we just lost that appeal, by the way. So that one tenant has cost me 10 grand. That is a frustrating thing that probably could have been solved with water monitoring, but we didn't have that in place yet. So you see some of that kind of stuff. Um, we have actually found that you shouldn't discount the idea of, if you have a problem tenant and they're not paying, or they're breaking the rules drastically or something, you can go through the eviction process, and that's usually the best course of action. But we've also found that just, you know, we call it cash for keys, right? I mean, it's a pretty common concept to say, look, you know what, here's $500. I'll even pay for your U-Haul. Just go find another place to live and we won't report you to the credit, agencies, nothing like that. You can walk free and clear. And we found that actually provides some less hostile transitions, especially when maybe the unit is in pretty good condition and we don't want them to change that in their last few days of eviction,
You didn't want holes
So
in the wall? I don't
yeah,
understand.
exactly. And you can sue them for it, but I promise you won't get it, so it's like sometimes diffusing fire with, maybe not smothering the flame, but carrying the match out the door is the better way to solve the problem.
That's a very gracious way of putting it. So,
Yeah.
it sounds like you have a lot of experience taking over maybe some C. It sounds like maybe they might be D's that you're, moving on up into C's, or
we've had one D. I'll never do another one, but
that's what everybody says.
Hey, the numbers look great.
I'll tell you what, if I could have a jar, I could fill that jar with how many times people have said exactly that.
Oh yeah. And here's the deal, Julie. We're gonna, now we haven't made any money on it yet, but it's a flip, right? So it's one of those things where we bought it for $2.5 million, and not 12 months later, we're going to sell it for almost $4 million. So you were going to make money, but it's not worth the gray hair, y'all. It really isn't,
What's so dicey about it for you? Because I had a Devin Elder was on, and he shared an experience. He's down in Texas.
Devin,
with
Wildhorn, right?
Yeah, he shared an experience on his episode, and it was great because it's like, nope, never again, never do a deed, never ever. I want to be alive.
They're just unpredictable, and so the problem is you have to have a management company who knows how to handle that tenant base. And I say tenant base there. I should have said resident base, but it is it's a difficult population. So you have to have people who are brave enough to go on the property. You have to have people who are willing to stand up to these people and not be walked out. Because if the manager's scared, you're going to lose control of that property. And we fired a company who that was the case. They were too scared to go to the property.
Oh, whoa.
And the tenants walked all over them. Now, the one we have now, they know how to lay down the law with these people, right? So there's that, finding the right management. And by the way, if you're buying a small D-class property, you're dead in the water, because there is almost no good management company who will deal with a property of that type for that little money. I mean, a management fee on a 36 unit property is nothing, especially if they're not paying rent, so it's a problem most people won't take on. So I would just steer away from that. A big D-class property, you might can pull it off if you have the right team, but the other problem is, like, here's another story, Julie.
Yeah.
4th of July, 2020. Okay. So by the way, we bought this property at the worst possible time. We closed on this property March 18th, 2020. Okay. So literally we
shutdowns are just happening.
Oh my gosh. It, like, literally a week later is when that started happening. And like, we went into this knowing we needed to turn over about 45% of the tenants. And then they took away our eviction stick. Okay. So it was really rough. So the problem is they're unpredictable. We went and spent some money solving, everyone tells you spend money on the exterior, show them there's a new sheriff in town, rebrand it, stuff like that. Well, we had started that process, and we were fixing some deferred maintenance, right? And one of those was like fixing the moisture problem and the rot in the basements so that the environment is healthier. We went and spent, I think it was about 10 grand, putting tarps and things like that down underneath and clearing out the garbage and replacing plumbing. I'll be darned if on the 4th of July, these residents decided to have a block party, and they busted open the doors to the basement, pulled all the plastic out, and had a slip and slide down MLK Boulevard. Like, you can't predict this stuff. Like, there is no social norm that what you and I would think is acceptable, right? It's like how could you predict, oh my gosh, I'm gonna have to redo that because
of course
the tenants made a slip and slide.
It's like, I'm just going to say, it reminds me of dealing with children, though, how unpredictable a child is.
You were dealing with children.
Okay, I could see my kids doing something crazy down the stairs, maybe, but because they're kids.
Yes. And I say that generally because I'll tell you, 55% of the tenants, I think I said 45 earlier, 55% of the tenants are good people. They've been there for 20 years. They're low income. They're really sad with what the community's turned into. And they are so appreciative now with what we've done with that place. Like now, and going back to your picking residents, this property, we did not buy this with investors. We bought it ourselves. This property, the target was always to put charity-backed tenants in. So it's either Atlanta Housing Authority, which is Section 8, or we have several charities who actually will pay for the tenant's lease a year in advance. And it's for people like they're helping distressed
Mhm.
families or single mothers, or like battered women, or a man who just got out of prison and is on a track to get back up, something like that. Not like a violent crime type thing, but
Right.
if the charity agrees to sponsor them, they come in, and now we have these good, appreciative people who are just trying to make it, and that builds a community,
Well, I love that concept. I've had this conversation quite a bit recently. It's something I'm pursuing, and that is just that concept of impact investing. And that's it right there. It's partnering with the local people. There are lots of different levels of it, but
It's lots of levels.
it's so exciting to hear. It's just amazing. Once you start pursuing it, you just start, I didn't even ask you, and that's what you're doing. Like,
I love that you said that. And we see eye to eye on this. Our coach has labeled this impact over income. So that's kind of how we think about it. Everything we do, what is the impact over income ratio? We want that to be as high as possible. So like, guys, why can't we do good and do well at the same time? Like this world is full of do good or do well while you backstab others, right? Why can't we do good while we do well?
Preach it. That's it. So I've been saying a lot recently in these conversations on impact investing. It's purpose and profits. They don't collide. They are one and the same. There's no reason. They're not mutually exclusive. Like, you can have both. But
Purpose and profit. You were like rewriting my marketing structure right here. Purpose and profits.
that's
This is
mine.
great.
That's mine. But you know what? The Quatro heartbeat makes so much sense because a heart has 4 chambers. It's like you can have that one. Purpose and profits, though. I'll trademark it.
I'll put purpose and profits to the side. Fair enough.
I like that your computer screen popped on. You're like, I am snagging this. No, but it is so true that we've been conditioned to think that in order for me to be a successful business person, I have to play rough and be aggressive. That was what drove me out of real estate when I was in my 20s. Was I just refused.
Yeah.
I'm like, this is not who I am or who I want to be. And I'm not going to be able to play in the sandbox and keep the person that I want to be alive. So I left. That was residential.
That's what got me into real estate. Oh yeah. That's what got me into real estate, Julie. That was residential.
Yeah. I'm like residential. And then I found multifamily. I'm like, oh, this is where the people are that have a heart. Yeah. So how did you go from engineering into multifamily?
Yeah. So it was a couple of very, I'll say, parallel and happenstance situations, right? One of them was I was an engineer for many years with NASA and General Electric. I designed rocketry and aircraft engines for a long. So I'm quite literally, my team jokes with me and says we literally have a rocket scientist on the team. I don't call myself that, but you'll hear them jokingly say that.
You really need to do that. That needs to be part of your branding. Like, I don't know how you're not, like, you just need to roll with it.
I feel like it's arrogant. Like, yeah, I'm a rocket scientist. I feel like it's arrogant, but it's fun when other people call me that. But anyway, so, I spent a lot of time doing hardcore engineering work and I loved it. And then I looked down one day, Julie, and I was like, look, I looked to my left and looked to my right and I saw my senior and principal engineers. I was like, wow, if I keep this path, this is the one thing I'm going to do the rest of my career. And there's 2 companies in the world I can work for. Right. So I started focusing into management a little bit and I kind of started running teams. Then you remember when the GE stock price plummeted. I was working for GE at the time. I was plucked for a very unique assignment, which was basically like an internal consulting firm. My job was to fly around the world, literally the world, like Asia, Scandinavia, Europe, all these places on GE's dollar, go to every facility where we manufactured stuff and figure out how do we do it better? How do we lower cost? So that was my kind of entry into the business world. And then that led to
seems like okay, we're just talking stereotypically. It's stereotypes here, okay? If this was Dude Perfect,
it was Dude Perfect.
Like, it's one of our family favorite things, right? Dude Perfect stereotype moment. And like rocket scientist, number cruncher engineer, and now they're sending you, like, most people would think stereotypically, that guy can't carry on a conversation. He can't, like, he was not going to be able to solve this problem. So I love that they are like, Okay, Chad, you're going.
I'm like one of the rare people who understands like the detailed number side and can like communicate with people. It's just really weird. But I learned that early. But anyway, yeah, they said, and it's dude perfect, right? Because I was literally I was married, but I didn't have any kids yet. I was traveling the world, getting to take my wife with me sometimes. I mean, I had 7 colleagues in Europe at the same time. We decided to spend a weekend in the Swiss Alps skiing
You're
because it
eight in
was
life.
cheaper to go to a ski resort than to stay in the cities we were in. So the company paid for it. It was incredible. So anyway, that's not why the GE stock price was down, by the way. But
I'm not so sure. I'm not convinced yet.
so that led to an executive position in supply chain. And this is where my story takes a turn. So up until this point, I was pretty satisfied with my work. I was still starting to figure out that, man, trading time for money isn't the best way to build wealth. I mean, we were just buying bigger treadmills. You've heard that analogy, right?
Mhm.
Well, then I take this job where I'm in charge of a global purchasing strategy for about $250 billion of renewable energy spend, like wind turbine type stuff. And this was a high negotiation, high business strategy. It was really cool from that perspective until I realized that the decisions I was making were literally taking everything from small companies. Like basically for us to win, they had to lose, and I actually drove a couple of small companies out of business with decisions that I made, and like, you want to talk about that weighing on your shoulders. So all of a sudden, this fulfilling life was like, it wasn't there anymore. I hated trading time for money. I realized that all of my efforts, there was a year where I literally saved $250 million for the company in my negotiation proceeds. And I got the same measly salary that I would have had before that, you know? The other part is by doing that, I wrecked people's lives because 2 companies went out of business. Okay. So there's that part of it. And then the second train simultaneous to this, my family has been in real estate, as my aunt, who's a second generation, and my mother as well. I'm the third generation. Now, I didn't know what they were doing at the time. I knew that my grandparents owned houses in Waco. I worked on them as a kid, but I had no idea what the economics of it were. Right. Well, granddad passes away, patriarch of the family, life of the party. I miss him dearly. He taught me so much, but then he continues teaching me after he passed away with what he left to be run. So grandma is still there. She makes a lot of decisions, but she's basically retired. This is where Kim came in and took over the business and started, really getting her asset management chops on 70 single family rentals, right? Well, since then, she went through and turned about 140% profit in the first year by fixing up, selling off, and upgrading some of the portfolio. And all of a sudden, we're like, whoa, there's something to this, you know? Meanwhile, I bought this house that I'm sitting in here. It's a 1930s live-in rehab, put about 50,000 in it and created, $250,000 in equity, like in a year. So that there was that as well. So we start to realize this, and then that leads to, the impact over income discussion of, hey, like, this is a problem. This quality, safe, and affordable housing is a
Yes.
problem in the nation, and it will be for, you look at the numbers. We are not building enough apartments or houses to keep up with it, right? And with investors, like us and not like us, people are buying property and raising rents. There is a crisis in this country, and it's not going away anytime soon. So we discovered this is a good place to be, where we can buy a niche product. We can fix up a downed asset. We can charge a little bit more, not top rents, right? We're talking enough to make a return and keep it affordable and do good while we do well. And that's really where the Quattro story blossomed.
It's so amazing. And I'm going to write that down. Do good while doing well, because that is really what it is.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
it's
I'll let you share that one. That one is on our website too, but you can share that one.
okay. You can have purpose and profits. Okay. I'll share. Abundance mindset, Julie. You say it all the
Abundance
time. And
mindset.
I was going to be a hoarder and like, those are my words. I'll get my stick and beat you away.
I love it.
So this is amazing because, and I think you and I spoke months ago, just we had connected over on LinkedIn or something.
Yeah.
And we put together that we're both third generation in this whole real estate space. You and I are these little rare unicorns, because I didn't realize that your experience was so similar in that I was around real estate, and yet I did not know about, for me, it was, I didn't know about multifamily investing or apartment investing, and I was told, not in a malicious way, but I was told, like, just stay away from commercial. That's like this whole other thing.
Yeah.
Just stay away from it. And so I did. So you had the same aha moment. Do you feel, just honestly, I had this moment recently where I'm like, I kind of feel just a smidge betrayed, but nobody did it maliciously, so I'm not going to feel that way. But there was this one moment a couple weeks ago while I was doing some website design work, right? And I'm,
Mm.
going through the content, and I'm like, feels a little like, how could I have missed out on this? I was around real estate all these years, so I didn't dwell on it and I let it go because, again, no
Mhm.
maliciousness involved. So
Yeah. And like, I get why they didn't teach it to me that much. And so the reason for my family, it's a little different, right? They weren't lifelong real estate investors. Like, so my granddad was a big corporate executive, right, for an insurance company. My grandmother was an entrepreneur for many years, ran some small businesses, mostly in like the hair salon type range. And when he was forced out, when I learned this lesson from him. The higher you go in corporate America, the bigger that salary becomes. There is a big and growing target on your back of people gunning for
yes.
that job. And all that had to happen was he got into a spat with the CEO. He was the VP, and he ousted him. It was that simple. Piss off the wrong person. And so I watched that, and that kind of wrecked him as a person, because that was his identity, Julie. I mean, he worked his
Wow.
whole career to get there, right? And so he recovered, though, and he's like, okay, well, I'm going to change course. And they went and bought a portfolio of rentals, and they did pretty well with him. But I feel like when he passed away, he didn't, like, he would teach if he knew what he was doing, right? And I think that they ran it well for a long time, but I think he still felt like he was learning. He didn't know how to teach it, or if he'd even want to push this on us, because he went through some hard times, right? They bought it when they didn't know what they were doing. They figured out what they were doing and became very good real estate investors. But he remembers that heartburn of learning it, earning your stripes with the school of hard knocks. And so I think that was probably the reason of, like, yeah, hey, come help me work on these. This is what it is. But you need to go get your college degree and your job and all that kind of stuff. And so I get it. And then it wasn't until much later where, Kim and myself got involved, and we're like, oh my gosh, like, but we were already in the mindset of, man, trading time for money is terrible. We were both
Mhm.
corporate burnouts at this point. Like, she had a much bigger career than I did, international executive for many years for large companies. And we were both just burnt out, and we figured out, hey, there's a way to direct this energy to good and to doing much better for ourselves and our families and our investors than we're ever going to do putting that money on a salary basis, or that
It's
time on a salary basis.
it's interesting. It takes a lot of courage to look at that, and to act upon it is even more courageous, because you don't, you're leaving a certain thing. Well, at least I know, if I'm in corporate America, if I'm doing this, for me, if I'm in education and I'm teaching, I can see a salary scale. I know, like, okay, that's sure and certain. But when you're putting, heart and purpose and, all of these things into the unknown, it
I need
takes.
to step on a soapbox. I'm going to set it on the table. I'm going to stand on it for a second. Okay.
Go for it. You're on it.
Whenever someone tells me a W-2 job or a 1099 job is certain, I tell them they are only 2 weeks away from termination at all times. They are 2 weeks away, a pandemic, a bad decision, and you're fired, right? As soon, like, and guys, I went through this with General Electric. Go read the news and see how many layoffs that company has gone through in the past 10 years. I lived through all of them. Okay. And somehow I was always either just valuable enough or just in the right place where that department wasn't getting cut. But I saw people who were much senior to me and much better than me, and I thought, cut, and it's not fair. But it is, as soon you are a number. And
Yep.
as soon as you are no longer needed or profitable for that company, you're gone. You are always replaceable. Even as a highly decorated engineer, right, who had been through some things, I was replaceable. I was just a very expensive laborer, right? I was a burden. And so the only way you're going to have certainty in this world is if you build that cash flow stream from things where you're not trading time for money for. It's the only way, right? And then if you have multiples of them, the odds of them all going down are very low. But the problem is we are taught as Americans that the American dream is a high six-figure salary that comes bi-weekly or monthly, right? We got to just stop thinking about my salary has to come every month for me to be secure. Like just put a little bit away until you can step back and breathe. And then like, if you don't, like, sometimes I don't see money for, like big chunks of money for a while, but when it comes, I know it's going to come eventually, because like, I know we're going to be successful. So anyway, in soapbox, but do not ever tell me that job is certainty, because that is, whew, I've been there.
Well, you know what? I'm gonna echo that from the teacher side of things.
Yeah.
And I remember I was, I think I was like maybe in year 5 or 6 of teaching.
Yeah. And you even have the government scale. That's a little more certainty, right?
You
Quote.
would think, but this is in my 20s. I learned that even teachers are expendable. Because at one point they were handing out pink slips because whatever didn't pass or this or that. And so it was a matter of literally, I was the one person, like everybody below me in seniority of who came in on the totem pole, everybody under me, I just missed it. Everyone under me though got pink slipped. So,
wow.
You're absolutely right. Like anything can happen at any given point. I kind of approach life like that. And it gives me a little bit of zest. It's like, well, you know what? You don't know what's going to happen. So you know what? Use it
It's
all
half the
for
fun
something.
Of it.
Our personalities can handle that. There are some personalities that really have a hard time. So, okay, I have to ask, you have a family, right? You have kids?
I do actually have a second one on the way, and it is the balloon was blue. I have a boy coming.
All right.
So I have thank you, but I also have a beautiful 2.5-year-old little girl, and my Labradoodle thinks she is the firstborn. So I have 3 kids, if you think about it that way.
Yeah. Dogs. Don't get me started on dogs right now.
Yes.
I have a shudder. So enough said. Okay. Are you going to teach your kids how to invest in real estate? Is that part of your plan?
Yes. And I think more thinking one level above that, I want to teach them about the mindset of abundance and how to create wealth. Like whatever that, it doesn't have to be real estate. That's my chosen vehicle. It's a common vehicle, but there are other ways to do it. And like there's got to be a way to teach this where you're not pushing it on them. I don't know what that is yet, but I definitely want to teach this to my children to where it's like, hey, build these income streams and then go be a musician if you want to. Like do this so you can do what you want to do,
Yes.
not
like
not
that, so that.
Yeah, exactly. And then it's like not like you have to want to be in real estate, but it's like learn to create revenue streams and then use those to fund whatever it is your heart desires. So if you figure out how to teach that, let me know, but I'm thinking about it.
Well, I will tell you that I think that I am onto something. My kids might be overdosed with real estate on one hand, but they also know we don't say college is essential for them. We have these very candid conversations with them about the purpose of college. College serves a purpose, and
it does.
That purpose might not fit with what your purpose and ambitions are. So we'll evaluate when we get there. But my daughter has been begging me to teach her about Bitcoin. So
goodness.
Isn't that funny? So they know we're in real estate, and then we got this little side, I just started dabbling into Bitcoin. And so they see, and we'll just watch we'll track it together. And so they've been part of that since the ground floor, and it's pretty fun. And
that's cool.
she's asking, she's turning 10 soon, and she was asking, she said, I really just want to understand. She kept saying, will you teach me about Bitcoin? I'm like, well, what is it you want to know? She's like, well, I want to know why it goes down and why it goes up. And I'm like,
beautiful.
Dang, these are great. I'm like, these are good. I just keep encouraging the curiosity. So
well, the fact that she's asking you those questions and be smart enough to understand the answers, that's wow.
I told her, I said, well, I'm not sure yet. I'm still learning. I don't know what.
Well, you and me both.
I can get some, I understand some, but I really don't understand it. So I just tell her we're learning together.
That's cool.
But maybe that's part of it, Chad. Maybe it's adopting something that's new for everybody in the family, finding some alternative asset to like dabble in so that they're on the ground floor and everybody's an equal learner in a sense. Maybe that's part of it.
I love that because, I've learned this from one of my coaches, Trevor McGregor. There is something called perceptual positioning, and there are three main places from which you can come at anything. And as parents, we typically come at things from the superior position, like I'm right, you're wrong, or maybe not that way, but
I know
I'm
you
teaching
don't.
you.
Right.
Exactly. I know you don't. And we could also come at it from the equality perspective, and then also from the inferior perspective. So think about when you're approaching, I'm going to go back to my corporate America experience. If I was approaching the CEO of GE with an idea, I can't walk in there and be like, I know and you don't, right? I got to approach
Right.
that from an inferior position or he will fire my tail, you know? So, there's those situations. And then there's those situations where you come at it from as equals, like, hey, I don't know about Bitcoin. I'm not afraid to tell you that, but let's learn together, and then it's not really you teaching her, it's y'all are learning together. And as a kid, they're probably much more open to that than you ramming something down their throat. So very interesting.
Yeah, so maybe you can just consider that a fun little sidebar for, what is you get to go into some alternative asset that you'd never possibly go into, and you get to experience it together.
I like that idea. That may be what we do. So.
Actually, it sounds like a lot of fun to me too. Oh, I'm doing
Yeah,
that. All right. We are running short on time, as always. It happens on this podcast. But I don't want to leave without talking about the real estate runway. I am super stoked on what Quatro Capital has coming down the pipes. And I'm wondering if you can share with the audience a little bit about it.
absolutely. So real estate runway is kind of our branding for what we're calling an alliance partnership program and a podcast. So we will also have a podcast where we talk about, current issues. It'll be the Real Estate Runway podcast, and, really foul play we found, like all things relevant to playing in this industry, whether you're an investor, whether you're an active player, you're learning, just curious, whatever it is, right? So we will have that coming out. And then what we've learned, guys, we've been to every mentoring program in the nation, right? We're education junkies, and it's great and it's needed, but we realize, look, the education space is crowded. We don't want to get into it, but unfortunately, what we found is you go spend between, I'll say, $5,000 and $40,000, depending on what program you go to, right?
That's fair.
you
Yep.
you get access to content. I view that as an investment in yourself. So I'm not dogging it, right? It's like going to college. That you need to do it. Um, you can also get it from books, but when those people come out of those programs and they're educated, but they're not experienced, right? There is such a high barrier to entry in this space because you need someone to qualify for the loan. You need someone to help you raise money who's got credibility. You need someone who knows how to drive the ship. I mean, this is not just about acquisitions, which is what every program teaches in the nation. So we've found ourselves in the very unique position to find the cream of the crop who rise out of these programs, and they're trying to get started and just can't get enough traction. Well, the real estate runway program is a way where there's multiple levels of it, but if an individual just needs us to kiss the paper and sponsor, okay, we'll work with you on that. If you need to be mentored, we have kind of an on the job training approach we take with it. We're like, okay, let's go do it together. We're going to choose what roles and responsibilities you will have and we will have. We will monitor all of it, right, as you grow, and really teach you the Quattro way, how we approach real estate investing and operations. And then for a very select few, once we get to those who we've done repeated deals with and we really mesh well, we work well, that's where you get to the membership level, and like you are basically day to day doing business with Quatro Capital. And so it's a way, like, we're not asking for money for this. This is not. It's purely like, if you've got some experience, you've got some education, rather, you have some education, you're trying to get started. We can partner with you and do a deal, or have you add value somewhere along the way and learn while you make money. We both make money in this way. And it's just a great way to help others grow the way we were helped, and to all, build each other up and do well together.
I love that you guys have created a system because, like you said, people will do this for you if you develop the right network, the right connections, and things like that. But
Right.
again, you have to be in the right place. You have to find the right people. You have to make the right connections, like all of these things. And you might not even know where to start. But, partnering with, Real Estate Runway, Quatro Capital. That could be a tongue twister. I don't know if you guys have ever done that, like when you're out due diligence, just see who can do it like 5 times in a row.
5 times fast, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. But to be able to do that with that $0 barrier. Yeah. And that's huge, because I was just on the phone with someone last week, and her thing was, I was interested, I gained nothing from this. We were talking about a program she was interested in, and we were talking about the barrier to entry. Well, there's this much. And I said, I put it in perspective. I said, well, I put this much money into my learning. And she's like, oh, this doesn't sound bad.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Well, you're right there with me. I mean, we've probably spent, I don't know, well into the 6 figures on learning and coaching and things like that. It's paid off, and we've not made millions of dollars in mistakes, right? When you're buying $10 million properties, that's a big deal, right? So there's that. But where was I going with that? What were we just talking about?
$0 barrier to entry.
A $0 barrier of entry. Yeah. So I still lost it. Well, maybe we'll come back to it in a second. That's okay.
We'll come back. Awesome. Well, I'm really excited, but what is the best way people hear you? And again, audience, I want you guys to remember that Erin Hudson, and I will drop a link to that episode, but she is also part of Quatro Capital. So you're going to get a sense of, between these 2 podcast episodes, you'll really get a sense of Quatro Capital. And I happen to be a fan of everyone there. There are 4. Yeah. Is it really Quatro?
There are now. We are actually Cinco now. So
Cinco. There are 5. Okay, I'm like, wait a second. I feel like I'm missing something.
There were 4. It was never named after 4 people. It was named after our 4 pillars: people, property, profit, and philanthropy. But the best way to get a hold of us, and I did remember what I was saying.
Okay, go for it.
So if you go to our website at thequatroway.com, and Julie will put that in the show notes, I'm sure. That's the best way to watch our bios. And yes, I said watch our bios. We recorded them, and schedule a meeting with us, email us, whatever it is you want to do. Or, we love talking about this space and abundance mindset and things like that. What I was mentioning before was that, oh my goodness, Julie, I literally should not have let that go. Wow. Okay, guys. Well, I promise I'm not always this spaced out. It was okay. We're gonna get there. This is a good thing. Okay, I got it. One of my mentors told me before, when we were talking about the amount of money you spend on education, things like that, and that's a barrier for some people. But what we've realized with this program, guys, people say it takes money to make money. Okay, I say that's false. It takes value to make money. And if you can bring value to someone, all we're doing is giving you an opportunity to do so, right? That will make you money, and money will come from those who have it. There's 2 ways to 2 parts of the equation: value and money. You put them together and you create wealth. So sorry that took me 3 times to remember, but
you know what, that proves that you are human. So you passed the test.
I am human, I promise.
Chad, thank you so much for joining us and just sharing so many of your insights and so many things that you have learned with us today.
Absolutely, Julie. I'm so excited to be here, and I can't wait for this to drop.
Yes. And to my fantastic, awesome listeners, thank you again for joining us. And remember, go find your freedom. Thanks so much for joining me for another episode of Ask Me How I Know. This episode was brought to you by 3 Keys Investments. They are dedicated to helping people like you, you, my awesome listeners, develop passive income and legacy wealth through multifamily investing. Feel free to check out their website, 3keysinvestments.com, to see if there is an offering that will help your portfolio grow and meet all of your needs. If you haven't already rated, reviewed, subscribed, liked, all of those bells and whistles, I would be absolutely honored if you would do that for Ask Me How I Know. Thanks again, and go make it a great day.